We are talking to Dr. Bradley Davis, Assistant Professor of Ed Leadership and Policy Studies. What are your best tips for staying productive in writing and publishing?
I think, this is a question that gets talked about all the time, and I think if you ask 100 different faculty members, you're going to get 100 different answers. But one piece of information that was shared with me when I was still a graduate student that I stick to even now is, most tenure promotion guidelines have, I don't know that most have them, but they should have some sort of defined rate at which your productivity needs to be maintained. So at a R1 or striving institution, it's typically going to be around, you know, 1 to 3 peer-reviewed journal articles a year. That's assuming this is folks that are primarily working with grad students, which happens to be the case for me. And what this person had told me was, you need to be thinking about how you meet that rate, because publication process is just that, it's a process. From the early stages of conceptualizing a paper to actually writing it, to submitting it, to hearing back in review, and then revising, and to publication, this can be a multi-year process. So it would behoove you to make sure that you have work at sort of these 3 large stages of that process. So this person told me, try to have 2 pieces that are in the conceptualization stage, like you're bringing the work together, 2 pieces that you're actually writing, and 2 that are in the review process. So kind of like the 3 big hoppers of idea stage, writing stage, and review and publication stage. And if you can kind of keep 2 in all of those, then you can avoid issues with rate. So going back to the rate, this concept of having regular amounts of work coming out regularly, that way you can avoid kind of having a year where maybe 0 or 1 things come out, followed by a year where you have like 5. And if that 5 hits right before a 3-year review or a 5-year review, oftentimes we're told that looks suspicious or whatever. So I guess getting back to your question, what's worked for me is just thinking about those 3 stages and trying to keep a couple pieces of work in each at all times. And
Sounds good.
That's done well for me so far.
The pipeline. Okay, thanks. And then what are your habits and processes as an academic writer?
It goes right back to that schema of having work at those 3 different stages. I tried to actually keep track in a spreadsheet of all the different projects I'm working on and where they fit into that schema. And if I feel like there's an imbalance, then I know, okay, I need to make some adjustments. I really need to focus on this one project, or this is moving along nicely, I can shelve it for a while and come back. And then another one I picked up from Dan Saunders, a colleague of ours here at UTA, also in Ed Leadership and Policy Studies. He told me to just start being more mindful of when and where you're working and what the surrounding circumstances are. So keeping an informal log, and for some folks they may not even need to write it down, but I think that would be a good place to start. But where it is that you're writing? Are you at home? What room in the house? Or are you on campus? Are you at the coffee shop? Are you at the library? What time of day is it? Did you, I even think about, did I have coffee that day? Anything that I think might affect sort of the creative process, my brain and all that. And I started to find these patterns, and I noticed that I was having these very grad school-esque bouts of furious productivity, where I noticed I was in my office by myself late on a Friday evening, maybe till midnight or 1 in the morning. I was just turning out pages writing. I was like, okay, that's an awkward time to be writing, but maybe I can try to do that again. And I've recreated that several times, and it's been very helpful for me. So getting back to your question, I think it's being sort of mindful of when and where you're being productive and what the circumstances are, and trying to recreate those times that you were productive, and think critically about what might have been in place those times where you weren't productive, So, for instance, say you're keeping a log, Peggy, and you come back and you're like, wow, last week I wrote, a half page total, even though I put forward this many hours toward, my research. Okay, that's not ideal. So what maybe is going on there? So that'd be my advice, just being mindful of what the circumstances are when you're trying to write.
Thank you.